Hopefully now that you've heard the cases speak about their designs, you can start to see how yours will take shape. For a bit more clarity, let's look at each design and talk about the components from the course that the cases drew in. Ashburton saw the need for funding for SMEs in South Africa that were addressing large social problems. They realized that part of the problem for these social SMEs was they were seen as higher risk than traditional SMEs, so they were struggling even more to find funding to grow. Heather and Dean knew that to get traditional investors on board as funders for their debt fund, they'd need to address the perceived risk around these social SMEs. As these SMEs are addressing social issues that are important to the government, Heather and Dean designed a guarantee mechanism where the government guarantees a portion of the fund in case the SMEs fail to repay their debt. This provided investors into the fund with an extra assurance that their capital will be safe, and allowed Heather and Dean to raise a larger fund and to lend to the SMEs at a lower rate. By using the guarantee, Heather and Dean lowered the risk of the fund, thus lowering the investors' required financial return. By designing around the investors' perceived risk and the government's desire for demonstrated social outcomes, Heather and Dean were able to create a larger, more attractive pool of funding for social SMEs. Zona was created to address the needs of Zambians wanting to send money cheaply and easily. The founders saw that the current options for money transfer did not fit the needs of the customers. Without reliable, accessible, inexpensive options for moving money, many poor Zambians were spending large amounts of resources, including time and money, on getting their money where it needed to go. Zuna saw that there was a developmental impact potential to addressing these needs. They used grant and debt and equity resources, as well as building an open relationship with their end users and their tellers. They are continually using design thinking principles to engage with their end users in a way that allows the end users to drive the process. In the creation of their savings product, they listened to their end users saying that they wanted to be able to save before they could borrow. In order to support their tellers' expansion, they used crowd-funded loans from Kiva to loan the tellers additional capital at a very low cost. At the Western Cape government, Tracy was determined to find a way to link in more private funding and also a way to understand how much it costs for specific outcomes to be met. She knew that the department was dealing with high stunting rates or chronic malnutrition, and despite hard work around antiretrovirals, there was still a persistent number of children born with HIV/AIDS. She knew that she had her own resources, but she also had those of NGOs and corporates in the space that were addressing these issues. Finally, she had help from us at the Bertha Center for Social Innovation, who were willing to help her develop a new type of funding structure. In the end, the government created an outcomes-based contract that had impact investors investing upfront in the interventions by nonprofits, which were directed at lowering stunting and mother-child HIV transmission. If the interventions achieve the outcomes, the government and a corporate donor will together pay the investors back. Now, SDI and Innovation Edge are still in the midst of their design phases and are continually adapting their approaches based off of what they were finding. SDI was created to amplify the voices of the urban poor. They are committed to land rights and access to basic services and informal settlements. Everything about the organization is built from the bottom up, from their board to their operating structure. The residents in informal settlements that form savings groups or federations do so for more than just financial inclusion. For them, it is a way to organize and be able to demand their rights. Thus, SDI is able to take the lead from these federations to understand what is important and what is possible. The Secretariat has access to global funders, government officials, and technically skilled individuals. By bringing together these resources, they have run hundreds, if not thousands, of successful projects over the past 20+ years. The opportunity for them now is to use business model innovation and find new types of partners to find ways to make the projects and the federations more sustainable, as pure donor funding will not always be available. This has been a long and will continue to be a long road for the board, the country offices, and the federations. As a rights-based organization, the transition to having some market influence is daunting and potentially against their mission. But the organization is determined to continue to find ways to create sustainable options and is opening up conversations with social enterprises around revenue sharing and looking at how to potentially use the data collected from millions of savings transactions. In the case of the sewer project in Uganda, a cross-subsidization model where residents pay more than others might be possible. It's important to remember that for nonprofits looking towards sustainability, innovative financing is a journey, not a destination. Finally, Innovation Edge. Innovation Edge was founded by forward-thinking funders to pull new ideas into the early childhood space. From a social perspective, the return on investment in investing in early childhood is much higher than investing in education later in life. Studies have shown that the impact you can have on a 2-year-old by making sure they have proper nutrition and stimulation can carry through to the rest of their life. There are many challenges around early childhood care and education in emerging markets. Poverty, lack of access to nutrition, and poor education of parents are some of them. From an innovation perspective, there's a lack of innovators and social enterprises focused on the space because business models are more difficult and early childhood has traditionally been a space for grant funding for very traditional NGO programs. Working with the resources from their funders, their team, and access to innovators and thinkers in other sectors, Innovation Edge has pulled in human capital and ideas into early childhood. The opportunities that they have identified have been around business model innovation, multi-stakeholder partnerships, and cross-pollination of ideas. They realized to be able to support these innovators throughout the innovation lifecycle, they would need to start using different types of capital. Thus, they are shifting themselves from a purely grant organization to a venture philanthropy style funder, planning to use grants alongside quasi-equity, debt with social milestones, revenue participation, and other types of funding that are required by their investees. Hopefully all of the case journeys have been helpful to you to frame your own journey. We truly appreciate them being willing to share their progress and their frustrations in such an honest manner. We're sure you'll have your share of frustrations as well as progress for your cases as well.